I always felt like I was literally thought of as the bed number.
Big part of like identity. You don't want to let yourself be defined by Emmy.
That's why sort of with my books, I really wanted to open up the humanity in it.
Let's talk about chronic illness. Hello everybody and welcome to episode 4 of Let's Talk About Chronic Illness. Today I'm joined by Jessica and we are going to be talking about identity. If you wouldn't mind sort of introducing yourself.
So hello, my name is Jessica Taylor Behrman, and I am Emmy sufferer for 15 years, nearly half my life now, and I'm also the author of my books, which I've got here. So A Girl Behind Dark Glasses, and then my new one, A Girl in One Room. So
I think it's amazing that you sort of got your story out there.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is that I wanted, I mean, I was saying to you that I wanted those years to have mattered, those years to have meant something. And as you know, we're obviously going to talk about identity and everything. You know, that was a massive part, was feeling like I was something, that I was doing something, even through all that suffering. And it's not about me wanting to be like, you know, or wanting everyone to know my story and everything like that. It's kind of trying to bring a sort of a human aspect to the suffering that we face, because at the moment, and it's very clear now, that you look and people don't see us. You know, so an ME sufferer is just it's not, they don't like see a person, you know, and that's what those books really wanted to be about. And also, as I say, like, I always wanted to be an author, but and that was the only thing that kept me going, was the idea that I was going to write this book, I was going to do this thing, and that was what I was doing. And again, that is a very much about why like identity played such a huge part in it.
Because I've been like reading a little bit of A Girl Behind Dark Glasses again a bit more recently, sort of when you're talking about how you're being seen as just like a bed number rather than a person. Like,
I really felt that was a huge problem, and that goes on into A Girl in One Room as well. So it was always, so in Behind Dark Glasses, I always felt like I was literally thought of as the bed number. It was where I was in the hospital, what, you know, how many people they could fit in, and was I there that shouldn't be there, and all that kind of thing. But it's very much about funding. So in A Girl in One Room, like one of the beginning bits, I came home from hospital in 2010, the end of 2010, just before Christmas, and basically the people who funded me being in hospital had decided they couldn't afford it anymore. So I didn't come home because I was well. I came home because their option was either I went into a nursing home as a 19-year-old, or I came home. I don't know, in that moment, again, it was about money. It was about money, and there was no identity there. It was literally about how much I cost them. And that's how I felt the whole time. Also, you know, A Girl Behind Dark Glasses is a girl. Because I didn't feel like they saw me as a person, or even, you know, because really in A Girl in One Room, I'm not really just a girl, you know, but I didn't feel like an adult. I didn't feel like I was able to make those decisions because I was being told what to do. And that was basically me and my life. Is constantly having to do what, you know, I was told to do. And that really wasn't, you know, and it took me a hell of a long time to actually realize I had an identity beyond that, beyond the hospital bed, and beyond, in fact, beyond my room. And that's a lot of the reason why it was called as it was, because I really feel that these books are about that identity, and sort of having that from a teenager because as a teenager, that's when you're growing as a person, you're becoming who you want to be, and that was taken away from me. And I honestly think it's probably only in the last couple of years that I feel like I have an identity that I made, rather than was put upon me. And that's such a huge part of everything, really, because I just don't feel that I'm seen, maybe now, but I just don't think I was ever seen by medical professionals as anything more than my condition. And it was a nuisance, and it wasn't, and that's what it always felt like. And I think, like, sort of when you're saying about sort of being a teenager, I got ill when I was like 15, 16. So yeah, like, you're just sort of starting to really develop your own identity, and you're really starting to grow into your own person, and then all of a sudden that's just taken away. You're just stripped of it. And if you think of people who have that happen, it's torture, that's what that. But the funny thing is that what we suffer with is not seen as that. But it really is, and it is, like, you see what ME can do to people, what chronic illnesses can do to people. It strips people of their livelihoods and everything. Why isn't it treated with the same disdain? Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, you hear, oh no, they've been like that, it's not seen as, oh my God, like, do you know what I mean? And that's what I was, I'm going to be 30 in a couple of weeks. I've literally spent half my life suffering from ME. Stuck from doing what, like, it's taken over everything. And that's what, and my thing is not the fact that I feel people should understand or whatever, because I don't honestly think people can understand that kind of suffering or that kind of length of time. You just want people to see you, and actually be cross for you, so, like, say, no, this is not fair, or no, I want research done it, and that kind of thing. And I feel like, sort of, from the ME world, we have to do that ourselves. So we have to do everything. And that's why, sort of, with my books, I really wanted to open up the humanity in it and how that suffering affects the person and affects their identity and affects who they are. Because I think, like, for a long time, my identity was my illness. But one of the massive things I had was when I came out of hospital, and I literally hadn't seen anyone for years. And I didn't really see anyone at home for ages either. And I saw my my friend, who was one of my oldest friends, who I literally grew up with. And I hadn't seen her for years. And she was going to be singing this song that I had written years ago. And she came in, and it was that moment that I was suddenly like, wow, we are different people, and it was really hard, because when I saw her and how how carefree she was, how laughing, and I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't quick-witted. I used to be very quick-witted, always, like, with a joke at the end of every thing, and I didn't have that. I didn't have any of that part of me. When I looked at her, and, like, she was at university, she was studying music and drama and everything, and I'm like, wow, it's almost like my ship hasn't sailed, that's what it felt like. And you're suddenly like, we're the same age, but we're completely, separate in a way. It's like, I'm, in a sense, socially, I was really young, but I was very, very mature in other ways, because I had to be. So, I sat there and she's laughing and joking. I'm thinking, I can't do that, And that was a really weird moment, because it was almost like my childhood. And I suddenly thought, wow, it's just, there's nothing, I don't know, it's really hard to explain, but it was a sudden realization that what had happened to me had changed me. And I had never contemplated the fact that it could change the person I am, but it has, and that was a real moment when you just think, I don't know what you just question it, and you just think, how has this happened, and it's almost like it's a silent thing that comes over and just changes how you are, who you are. It's really bizarre. Like, I had to cope in a completely different way, and so that was me going into my own little world. And there's this, my one room, and that's why my Facebook page is The World of One Room, is it became a world, so I could go anywhere. I went to beaches, I went to different countries, but just all in my imagination. You become strong in ways that most people have no understanding of. They don't have to think like that. And in a way, that for me, I'm like, oh gosh, yeah, that's something that I've taken from this. But then parts of me are like, no, I actually want to be me. I want to be so in the past couple of years, I'd say I'm more jokey, I'm more fun, because I think I lost that aspect because I suffered so much that I couldn't be fun. And that sounds strange, but it was a really hard thing to see. What I found hard was the fact I never gave permission for any of this to happen. I never gave permission for it to take my identity, to take my who I was. And it felt bad enough, the fact that it had, that it made me like be in severe pain all the time, and fatigue that's beyond like beyond recognition. Like like someone normal like who says, oh yeah, I'm tired, and you're like, yeah, well, I could give you a whole different meaning to that word. And it made me angry, actually, really angry, because I just thought, I just never said that was okay to do that. I never had any control over it. And I think, like, in the heat of the moment of everything happening, I didn't even think about what was going on. It was survival. Literally every moment was about surviving the next minute. And it was only years later that I was like, wow, I've changed, and I'm not sure I necessarily like that. That was a really weird thing, because it was almost like, and I think that's the thing with when it comes to identity, you have to become friends with yourself, because you're on your own. So if you hate yourself and you're stuck with yourself, it's not going to be, do you know what I mean? And I think that was like a really big part of it as well. It was sort of that, you're like, wow, I know myself in a different way. And I think also where we spend so much time like isolated, it's like, so you're even more aware of everything, and that can be a blessing in some ways, and also a curse, because it's really, it's a weird dynamic. And it's a very strange realization of everything.
I sort of have felt that sort of before I was ill, I was a very, very social person. Like, I loved sort of being with all my friends and everything. But when you do get so unwell, you're spending so much time just with yourself, that then actually when you do start kind of interacting with your friends again, it's almost like I sort of forgot how to do that. And it's just like, you don't really know how to act,
how to be. And you are, I think you sort of, I analyzed everything I did, and like, I'm looking at every person, I'm listening to, and I actually found it really exhausting, really, really, really exhausting, trying, just literally just trying, and trying to even follow a conversation. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't, just so loud. That was my thing, because I was always really sensitive to sound. And I mean, I couldn't even cope with my dad's voice. Even when he whispered, I couldn't deal with it. It was too loud. And so when I was sort of improving a bit, and then I was sort of seeing, like, people talking in different tones, and it's like you're sensitized to everything. And that really affects how I act, because I'm just suddenly like, oh God, just shush, shush, shush. I'm used to making really, really hard decisions, like, oh, do I save my energy so I can go to the loo, or do I eat some food?
Yeah.
That's the sort of, decisions, and then I tell that to my friends who haven't got ME, and it's like, what? Oh yeah, no, that's my usual decisions that I was making, and then how can you make a decision about that? And it's almost like, and that for me is the hard thing, is like when I'm with my friends who I've known before I was ill, it's hard because I don't always want to make it all about ME, but ME is a part of that.
Yeah.
And that's what's really hard, is because you don't want it constantly to be the conversation, but then it is the conversation. It's really hard to know where that level is, as such, to have that healthy bit of life escapism away from the condition, but also understanding of it as to why everything else is a challenge. Which I don't always feel is necessarily understood.
Yeah, definitely. I think, sort of making those decisions, it's so like impossible for sort of like normal healthy people to comprehend. They just can't like understand how you can make decisions between those sorts of things. And I think definitely a big part of like identity, you don't want to let yourself be kind of like defined by ME, so you don't want that to sort of be the only thing that is going on, but it's still sort of recognizing that it's there.
I spent years fighting the condition. I didn't want it to be me. I didn't want it to be that. I needed to be me and everything. And honestly, I think the best thing I did was learning to live with it, learning to be friends with it, in a sense. And it's a really weird concept, but it's like, I was like, okay, you're around for the long haul, so let's help each other out, in a sense. Do you know what I mean? And it was that sort of, actually, no, you'll get a bit upset if I go. I literally thought of the ME as a monster. Like, literally, that was my thinking of it. And then I was like, well, and in a sense, it's not becoming friends with the ME, but becoming friends with your body, in the sense you're like, no, I know that will pay for it if I do that. I just won't do that this time. And honestly, I think that change from fighting an illness to acceptance, because I honestly think acceptance is a massive part of identity as well. Like, accepting that that's part of who you are and a part of you actually makes a massitive difference. And I honestly think I actually saw more improvements when I did stop fighting and stop being like, I have to do this, I was like, oh, this is easier, and that was a massive part of it.
Because I sort of feel like I'm still going through sort of accepting. I'm still sort of trying to do that, and I definitely I talk about my body as if it's not a part of me. Like, if I'm talking about my body, like, in terms of ME and stuff, I talk about it as if like it's a completely separate thing.
But I think a lot of that is a coping mechanism. And the thing is, as I say, like, it took me many, many years to get to that point. Many years. I mean, I would only say that I got to that point in the last 3 years. Like, literally, I spent 12 years with that kind of problem, and it was funny because it was actually when I was coming up to my wedding. Okay, and so I'd made this thing that I wanted to walk down the aisle for my wedding, right? That was how it had to be. It had to be like that. And I think, like, Girl in One Room, I think it really shows that desperation. And in a sense, it was that coping mechanism. My coping mechanism was thinking, right, this is the next thing. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. And I think it's quite evident in the book that is literally all I'm hanging on to. It was a few months before the wedding. Actually, it was like just after New Year's Day, right? And my wedding was in the April, okay? And I had been doing all this plan slowly, and slow exercises, very much pace going on. I had a massive fall. I fell out of a bed, but my bed was up high, really high. When you think of the situation, because as I say, this book follows from the fact where I couldn't really move, and then at this point, and so I couldn't even roll over, any of that. And all I did, I was watching television, Sherlock, as you do, because I loved Sherlock. And it was one of those episodes I didn't want to take my eye off it, because you know how it always, something happens, and I found it hard enough to process anyway. So I turned to get the drink, but it wasn't there, and I just went bang, like completely came out of the bed, like basically I overbalanced, and the whole of my body just went out, and I literally, and the floor was really, really hard, it was like rock, like it was so hard. And there was this moment, I don't know, it was a real realization thing. It was like, I have no control over what happens. Like, I don't know, it's weird, because it was like in that moment, as I'm falling, I'm thinking, oh my God, like you're thinking, right, this was all my plan, I was doing this, I was doing that, oh my God, what? Because none of it, there was no, I suppose in a sense you got real clarity, because you're like, nothing's for certain, nothing, I can't plan anything, you know, like this is how it is. And as much as I was panicking at the time, thinking, oh my God, because I have osteoporosis, which I was lucky, because I literally like 2 months before been told that it had improved, which I had been told would never happen. I was told literally you're going to have like really old bones for the rest of your life. And it actually reversed, which was shocking in itself. But so I had just been told that, and it was that moment you're like, oh my God, has this all gone to pot? Like, is everything gone now? Because if I had done that, say 6 months ago, and had that kind of fall, then the idea would be in the fact that I would have broken my spine, all of that kind of thing. And that was pretty much it. And it's, all these thoughts are going through your head, but then you're like, and as I say, it was like a split second, but it felt like it lasted an eternity, because I was suddenly like, I'm fighting, why am I fighting this condition? Why am I fighting for everything? Why am I not living in the moment? Why am I not? And all these things like whirling around my head. I was like, actually, I do want to live. And am I, in a sense, it was that sense of, and I know that sounds dramatic, but it's that fact that I was like, but am I living all the time I'm fighting? And it was that moment where I was like, I don't think this is how I want to continue on. Like, where's the forward? I don't, and then you get to that point and say, you know, you walk down there, what's next? Why does it have to be something after that? Do you know what I mean? And I think that honestly was such clarity, because I suddenly thought, I just want to be, you know? And I don't think I'd ever let myself do that. Because I couldn't, you know, I had a lot of loss in the time that I was really unwell. So in a sense, I lived for everyone. Like I wanted to, like I would not lived, I fought for everyone, you know. And then there was this moment I was like, but I want to actually live as well, you know, like I want to do something. Like I don't want everything to be about the next moment, the next this, the next that, like, you know. And again, in that moment, I'm like, oh my God, like I've spent every minute of my life like fighting for the next minute. I don't think that's all I want. And it's really weird, because it was literally that moment I was like, okay, what will be, you know? But it was actually really powerful to have that moment and just be able to go, okay, it's all right. It's okay. And I never let myself do that. Never, because I had always been fighting the next infection, fighting the next kidney stone, fighting the next, you know, like when my stomach would stop working, and then I would end up being on NG fed, and I was fighting doctors, fighting nurses, fighting every time. It was fighting, and it was like, I'm exhausted, I'm done now, you know. And that actually was quite nice to be able to, it was quite freeing to just be able to go, it's okay now, we can do this, you know, by being with my body rather than against it, rather than fighting every single person, every little bit. You're just like, okay. And you like, it's almost like your whole body, whole self did a huge sigh of relief. It's like, okay. I'd always had to be the positive one. I'd always had to be the one, you know, thinking, well, no, it gets better. And like, actually, no, at this precise moment, it's crap. And that is how it is, you know. And again, that realization, that identity thing really helped me.
Yeah, because I think for sort of people on the outside, sort of people who are healthy, sort of us saying like, yeah, I'm not going to fight against my body anymore, to them probably can sound like we're giving up, but it's like, no, it's actually the complete opposite of that.
Yeah, I think it is honestly the opposite. I think because the thing is, you know, it's the culture we are in anyway, that you fight conditions. You fight like, oh, they got cancer. Oh, you keep fighting, keep pushing. And it's like, yeah, but when it's a chronic condition, it's not something with an end date.
Yeah.
You know, and it's actually about you know, it's about managing that, you know, so you can live your best life despite your, you know, what you suffer with. And you know, when I say best life, I still lived life in one room. Like I still had something and I still did things, you know. The thing of fighting your body doesn't necessarily work in that kind of context. Saying that, some of what I've been through, if I hadn't have fought it, I wouldn't be here. And that, like, clearly, honestly, that is seriously like, and it's really hard because then some of my conditions, like some of the times I've been in hospital, literally, there have been some very dark times for my family, and literally I just held on to the next minute. I remember thinking, right, just one more minute, like trying to manage it. So I think there are pluses and minuses to it, but when you're dealing with it on a sort of a chronic basis, so over time, then that doesn't necessarily make anything better. Whereas in short time, it can. Like if you have like a really bad infection, it can make a massive difference. But if it's over a long time, it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I think that if when you are sort of like constantly fighting it, that sort of makes it define you and makes it take over your identity more than if you do just sort of think, okay, let's work together, let's just take it a day.
It does, but I think it's a long route. It's not something you can just say. Like it's very, very easy for me to just say, yeah, well, you need to like work with your body, you need to like be on its side. If it's just not as simple as that, you know. You can't, like, it's almost coming to terms with the grief, you know. You can't just, there's no time frame for it. And it has to be about what you manage. And so like being able to like, for a long time I spoke about my body as a separate thing to my identity. And it was only like, as I say, 3 years ago when I literally was like, actually it is my identity, like my body is me. And sort of made, I don't know, worked it out that kind of way. But that's all about acceptance, isn't it? And that only happens with time. You know, there isn't anything, you can't speed it up and you can't slow it down. It happens when it happens, in that sense.
I think maybe we'll leave it there.
Thank you so much. As I say, I'll just have a little bit of a breather.
Thank you so much for chatting to me.